Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1 GV Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations. I'm going to attempt to answer a couple of questions that came from a viewer, and I told that viewer that I couldn't answer in writing because of certain issues. Drugs that I'm on for pain, but I'm still perfectly capable of doing YouTube videos for some reason. So here we go. His questions: number one, if I want to include, and I meaning him, a low-pass filter between my radio and my antenna, LP standing for low pass, where should I put it? Between the radio and the antenna, or between the tuner, AAT, automatic antenna tuner here, which is what I recommend here, and the antenna? Should it go between the radio and the tuner, or the tuner and the antenna? The place to put a low-pass filter like this is right at the radio output. Now I'm assuming it's a 50 ohm low-pass filter. It's designed, that is to say, for 50 ohm impedance coaxial cable. So you run your coax as far as you need to go to the base of the antenna, where you have an automatic antenna tuner, and then you make the antenna as tall as possible. That's the answer to question number one. Now question number two has to do with a small lot. How do you get a good ground for an antenna like this on a small lot? And he's referring to radials that are only 10 feet long. And I'm assuming that he wants to go in a circular pattern, and he says, how many should I put? Is it the more the better? And the answer is absolutely yes. The more radials you can put down, the better. In fact, your best bet would be to bury a copper disc of 10-foot radius just under the ground here in your lot. He's referring to a 15 by 15 foot lot. Now how you're going to get a 10-foot radius radial system in that size of a lot, I'm not exactly certain. But what he says is that each of these radials has to be 10 feet long. If you can put 100 of them, great. If you can put 1,000 of them, that's even better. But the more you can put down, the better. All of that said, and I recommend an automatic antenna tuner at the base of your antenna, where your feed line goes to your antenna, and then make that vertical antenna as tall as possible. As tall as the law will allow, as tall as physical constraints will allow. No coils, no traps, no nothing like that. And he wants to operate on 40 and 80 and possibly even 160 meters. That would be 40 meters, 7 megahertz, 80 meters, 3.5 megahertz, and 160 meters would be 1.8 megahertz. Now when you have frequencies that low on a lot this small, you're trying to operate an antenna on a lot this small at frequencies as low as these, you'll be able to get a good match if you have a good antenna tuner. I'm not sure that you'll necessarily need the low-pass filter. Depends on what type of a tuner it is, but you probably won't need that low-pass filter. That'll save you some money, and it'll save you a little bit of insertion loss too, because everything you put in there has a little bit of insertion loss, even if you have a 1-to-1 SWR. But in any case, I can say one thing about this system with absolute certainty. It's going to be a compromise system. It's not going to be very efficient, no matter how many radials you put down at these frequencies. No matter how tall you make that antenna, unless you can manage to make it a half a wavelength long on each of these bands, then you can do pretty well. But a half a wavelength on 40 meters is 66 feet, 132 feet or so on 3.5 megahertz, and 270 feet or so on this band, 1.8 megahertz. Now, if somebody's going to let you put up a 270-foot vertical in a little backyard like that, and if that vertical can somehow be engineered to be self-supporting at that height, the only way I can imagine you do that would be to use a balloon or a kite to support it. And a lot of places aren't going to be very happy with that kind of thing if the lots are this small. But I'm assuming a height of something like 20 to 30 feet, automatic antenna tuner, coaxial cable to your radio, low-pass filter if you really need it or think you need it, and as many radials as possible, 10 feet long. That's the complete answer to question number 2, with the emphasis on the fact that you're just not going to have a very efficient antenna. That said, the inefficiency of such an antenna should not stop you from trying to use these bands, because you'd be surprised how many contacts you can make on an antenna this small with maybe 100 watts of RF output. You would be surprised. But you won't make any if you don't try. If you don't try and set this antenna up and get on the air and start sending and receiving signals with people, you'll never make a contact on any of these bands. So I recommend go for it. That is my design recommendation. With that said, I will say 73, which means best regards in ham radio jargon, and so long for now.